love and know that science isn't just, beakers and chem sets. It's going out and touching the soil, touching a leaf on a tree, looking up at the sky, wondering where the stars, what the constellations are, the stories of the stars.
In this episode, I'm talking with Grace Crain Wright, ETH alumna, plant ecologist, and STEM educator. So Grace, you're joining me from Colorado. You got to tell me, do you already have snow?
We have a little bit. We got a dusting, but actually earlier this week it turned into a lot worse than we were expecting, and it was a little scary driving on the roads. I have to say that's something I miss being in Switzerland is not needing to drive, is just needing to hop on the tram or get on the train and not have to worry about potentially getting into fender benders. But it's about you can see a little bit more now, but it's coming.
I understand.
Yeah.
But you've lived all over the States, right? I grew up in
Yes.
Ann Arbor, Michigan, so I have a great
Okay.
affiliation to, Indiana because I saw all those football games growing up. You were in Indiana University, you were at the University of Edinburgh, you were in El Paso, and then you went to Switzerland. I mean, it must have been really different.
It was really different. During my time in my undergraduate at Indiana University, I did have an opportunity to do research in Croatia. And
Huh.
so I got a little bit of an understanding of kind of that European life in that sense. But I have to say, Croatia really opened my eyes into wanting to live abroad again. And so when the opportunity to research at ETH came about, I did not hesitate. I did not hesitate to move to Zurich. It was such a no-brainer for me, knowing my experience in the past.
So what exactly you did your PhD at ETH. What exactly did you study?
So we were working on a European Space Agency project called Melissa, which
Hmm.
is the Microecological Life Support System Alternative, which is a mouthful.
Whoa.
Yes, it's a
Right.
huge
And
mouthful.
this sounds like stuff where you want to figure out how people can live on long space journeys or on Mars or something.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly
Oh,
what we were
that's
working
cool.
on. So I was focused on a part of that project that looked at how to grow plants from
Hmm.
human-derived wastes. So from human urine and human feces. We were looking at how to grow plants in a water-based system or hydroponics. So
Huh.
there were a lot of challenges that we were looking at, but mostly the main focus was truly trying to understand, can we provide enough nutrients? Can we have a
Right.
stable environment for the plants to grow that then can provide, food and sustenance for the crew?
And what was your conclusion? Because
Our
you published a
conclusion,
paper
we
on
did
this
publish
last
a
year, right?
paper. Yes, we did publish a paper. That paper was focused a little bit more on the need for understanding nutrient balances in
Hmm.
these closed system models. And the reason for that is because every plant has a different nutrient need, or
Hmm.
nutrient needs are going to vary based on stage of the plant life, as it's growing, the environment that there's just so many parameters that are necessary. And something that's not well known in a lot of these nutrient cycle, or a lot of in these models, are nutrient understanding for plant uptake for a multiple types of plants. So that's really where that paper came in. It was more of like a kind of a review paper. It brought in some of our research, but a lot of the hands-on experiments that we worked with, or that I worked with while I was in Zurich. I worked with a lot of master's students that
Hmm.
then published their theses, and some undergraduate students. And we found that the one of the fertilizers that we call it fertilizer, even though it's urine based, from AVOG universities. So, well, not
What is
university,
AVOG?
AVOG. Oh gosh, all the acronyms. This is another Swiss institute. People listening to this will know what AVOG is, but shouldn't ask
I don't know.
the oh goodness, it's the I'm gonna be very embarrassed, for people listening to this. They'll be like, "Come on,
That's
Grace, you
right.
know what that
Don't
is."
worry.
Um, but AVOG is another institute that is affiliated with ETH that is more
Okay.
applied sciences, and they do a lot of water and waste treatment
Huh.
work. And I worked very closely with the team there
Hmm.
that was looking at um, how to do nutrification, or not
Hmm.
nutrification, basically to take the nutrients out of urine and create give those nutrients then back to the plants. And they have a spin-off company called Vuna, which creates fertilizers that are sold across Switzerland. But
Hmm.
so we were testing kind of one of those fertilizers in a hydroponic system because it
Hmm.
hadn't been done. And we found that it works. You have to really pay attention to how much you're adding. You have to really pay attention to for anyone doing it, you could do this experiment at home. You buy a bottle of Arin and start growing plants at home, and you can see that in a soil system, soils add a little buffer. In a hydroponic system, you got to be paying attention a lot more, cleaning out the area, making sure you're not over fertilizing, not under fertilizing. So we are still, I know the group there are still working on some of this research.
Hmm.
So I did leave 3 years into my work because I got a job in the States. So I technically didn't finish my PhD with ETH, um, but maintained a lot of contacts with them, and they continue to do this work. They are leading in this work in Switzerland and within the institute. I think they have 3 other students now continuing to look at, plant nutrient cycling and hydroponics and these different systems that all connects to this Melissa project. Um, but there are a lot of challenges with trying to create a closed system in a greenhouse in Eshikon. We had to
I can imagine.
figure out our questions, and really focus on what mattered to us and what may matter to folks here on Earth as well. So we looked at kind of those both, like what makes sense for space travel and what makes sense for folks on Earth.
So I'm going to have to ask, what would it take for you to finish that PhD?
What would it take for me to finish? I would love to finish the PhD.
I bet.
I would love that. This was a very amazing project, and it was with amazing people in Switzerland. And, they provided a lot of opportunities for me. And for this particular, I guess, direction,
Hmm.
space. I think ETH Zurich is opening up another space related,
They have a fabulous
yes,
space program now. Very multidisciplinary from all. I'm
exactly.
sure you must have been part of that,
Yeah,
or you would have been part.
I want to think that maybe I had a little
I'm
influence on
sure
that,
you did.
but it's so wonderful to see, ETH Zurich and just Switzerland in general continuing to build up in the space industry, and take that multidisciplinary approach, because that's what's so important. And
Hmm.
I do really believe that, working in the plant ecology side of things and that being hosted at ETH Zurich and the Agricultural Sciences Department made a difference, and they continue to move forward. But back to your question of course, I would want to finish my PhD. It was a
Right.
little complicated. It was a very particular time frame and very
Hmm.
particular funding sources, um, and so it was not a decision taken lightly to walk away and to move on to a different kind of trajectory. But what was really beautiful about what I did during my PhD and what I did while I was in Zurich is I had a lot of opportunities similar to this, is to share
Hmm.
science, to get folks excited about space science and the intersections of environmental science and agricultural science. And that's what I ended up doing when I came back to the States. I became more of a STEM educator, working with a NASA organization, a NASA program that worked more with students directly,
Is
which
that
is what
Globe?
that is GLOBE. That is
Got
exactly
it.
GLOBE. And funny enough, GLOBE is also an acronym.
You
uh,
know,
you
why am I not surprised? But that's a really smart acronym.
Yes, it is a very smart acronym. So GLOBE stands for Global and Learning let's see, global learning observations to benefit the environment.
Oh,
And
that's good.
so
That's very WYSIWYG.
it is very straightforward. And Globe is a program that's been around. It's coming up on its 30th year. In 2025 will be 30 years of Globe. And so taking all of the experiences I had, working with, because I volunteered and worked on project with the Swiss Space Agency. We did like some
Cool.
fun projects called Agluna, which was, a lot of the students working on the Melissa project kind of came together and kind of created a smaller version of it in a way, to be part of this Agluna project that looked at how to bring these technologies to a moon base, and it was up on Zermatt. There was lots of really cool connections, that we were able to do that brought the science back to the public, and that's what really got me excited about the Globe program, is because that's exactly what they're doing. Is it's
Right.
a program in over 127 countries, including Switzerland, where students get connected to earth science and space science, and they get to go out and make their own data collections and sometimes connect with NASA or ESA scientists, and it's it's been a blast working within this program.
Any specific stories you'd want to share from your time at Globe?
Oh,
Just to illustrate what it actually means with the how it actually
yeah.
translates.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. A lot of my time with Globe, it was at the tail end of the peak of the COVID epidemic. So a lot of my work that I did with
Wow.
Globe was
Remote
ended up being
and
remote.
virtual.
Yes,
Yeah.
remote and virtual. Um, but I had the amazing pleasure. So in 2023, we were able to bring back the in-person meeting. And this was an annual meeting that was usually held somewhere within the United States. We had it held in Colorado because that's where Globe was based at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I was able to pull together and focus on a student research experience, which was bringing students from all over the world, ages 10 to 18, to come to Colorado and in the Denver area, for a week long kind of research experience. But it also turned into a cultural experience. Some of
How
these students that
fabulous.
came had never been on a plane before, had never been to a big
Wow.
city. So we had the opportunities, and it was just an absolute blast seeing these students get out in the city and then get out into the mountains, taking data, learning from scientists, learning about indigenous communities here within Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
going to different museums, going on hikes, going out and collecting their own data. And then they got to take all of that data they collected around Colorado and compare it back to their home. So their homes were in South Africa, their homes were in Bhutan, their homes were in places, different states around the United States, and then share that with STEM professionals and NASA scientists and educators from all over the world at the conference. So it was a whirlwind. We were all very tired at the end, but the experience that these students had was honestly life changing. And I'm not just saying that because it was something that I got to lead, but these students shared that with me and made me cry in front of everyone at this conference,
Yeah.
because they presented, me with a letter at the end, and
Oh, how
it was
lovely.
very heartfelt. And that is where I found that I truly love science, is seeing the wonder and excitement on students' faces. And students can be anyone, any
Mm-hmm.
learner. And that was something as well that Globe did, or does. And what I have learned to love as a STEM educator is that, um, a lot of people say K through 12, and then we say, kindergarten to the end of, typical high school or into early college. but it's also fun to say K through gray or K through
Ooh,
99.
I like K through gray. That,
K through
speaking
gray.
as in the gray end, I think that's a wonderful expression.
Yes,
We are learners, right?
we're all
Curiosity
learners.
is a natural human quality. And these kinds of exploring that curiosity through science just sounds fascinating.
Exactly. And that's what I absolutely love, and know that science isn't just, beakers and chem sets. It's going out and touching the soil, touching a leaf on a tree, looking up at the sky, um, wondering where the stars, what the constellations are, the stories of the stars. There's a lot that science can open, and I hope, as I continue in my career, I want to be able to continue, changing that narrative a little bit about what STEM means and what science means, to because it can be for everyone. And that's what I've really found that I am very passionate about, and I found that through my work in Switzerland, and then into my work that I've done with the Globe program.
Very cool. So, when you're working on these topics, how did you pivot from focusing on most environmental scientists focus on the various ecosystems on planet Earth, right?
Mhm.
Because they're so varied, right? But
Mhm.
your research and your interests seem to sort of go to extreme environments, right? Deserts,
Yes.
mountaintops, space. What really compelled you to, pivot to those kind of more, are they stressed systems, or what
Yeah,
makes them different?
that's a great term. Stressed is, but it's also
Hmm.
resilient systems, um, extreme systems. When you talk
Hmm.
about astrobiology, a lot of it's looking at extreme environments, and a lot of those places on Earth that you named, desert ecosystems, high altitude ecosystems, or saltwater, deep sea ecosystems.
Yeah.
These are all extreme, and they can be analog sites for different planetary bodies.
Hmm.
And that's really what got me interested. As a little kid,
Oh,
I
that's
grew
cool.
up with a space physicist in my home. My father is a space physicist, and so we watched a lot of sci-fi. We read a lot of sci-fi novels. Um, I went to satellite conferences when I was very young, and so I had a very, blessed opportunity to be um, subject to, this space science and that realm. But at the same time, again, my father and my mother, we loved being outside. We loved traveling. We loved, going out and exploring. I had a stint when I was younger that I was obsessed with birds. I would go birding, when I was 8 years old, carry a encyclopedia around with me. Um,
And a spotting scope.
yeah, I wish I had a spotting scope. It was just a good old pair of old binoculars,
Binoculars. Well, they
but
do the
yeah,
trick, right?
they do the trick. Mostly saw lots of nests, so I wasn't very good at spotting the actual birds. Um, and
It's actually not that easy.
yeah, it's pretty
You
difficult.
hear them and you look at the tree and you go, where
Where'd
are
they
you?
go? Exactly. And so I guess I always have had a very curious mind,
Hmm.
and Um, so I was always enthralled by the idea of biology, of on other planets, of
Hmm.
understanding other planets, understanding those extreme environments, and I think that was fueled by my parents, that was fueled by the literature I was reading, by the movies I was watching. I saw, I don't necessarily say Avatar is one of my favorite movies now. As I've gotten older, I understand a little bit more of the
Avatar's great, though.
contextual. It
Come
is a
on.
great
Come on.
movie.
It
It is a
really
great
is.
movie. The first one, I've really
Yep.
enjoyed, and Dr. Grace Augenstein, who I share a namesake with, is an astrobiologist. He's a xenobiologist, and she goes onto these other planets. She goes into Pandora, and she's looking at the root system, the plant life, and
Hmm.
really trying to understand those interconnections with the not only the Navi people, but also the life throughout the entire planet of Pandora. And that is so beautiful to me, and was always a very strong um, what, I don't know what the word, just a very,
It sounds
I
like a very clear icon,
yes, it
not
was a
an
very clear
image.
icon for me
Yeah.
when I was very young, and so that's kind of what I sent my trajectory on. But I have to say, my path was not clear. I would say I, I changed my major in my undergrad almost 5 times. I started out as anthropology because I loved cultural understandings and interconnections with cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a minor in psychology for the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually changed to focus on biology, but a lot of the biology that my undergrad university was focused on was health sciences. And
Hmm.
I originally was like, oh, maybe I want to do health sciences, but was in what really changed my perspective was I was actually on an anthropology field trip, and we were hiking in Totontepec, which is
Where's that?
a mountain village in, I think, middle to southern Oaxaca, which Oaxaca is a
In
Mexican
Mexico.
state. Yes.
Yeah.
And we were doing a hike very early in the morning in Totontepec, and I was just overwhelmed in a good way by the plant life and the lusciousness of
Mm-hmm.
this place and the culture of the people. And I knew that I wanted to do biology. I wanted to be a plant ecologist. I wanted to understand interactions of plant life
Mm-hmm.
and cultures and soil. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what led me to finish my degree in biology. And then I took a year off. I actually went and worked in a conservation internship out in California,
Mm-hmm.
where I worked in STEM education,
Mm-hmm.
but also in soil, mostly in soil ecology.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what then led me to my um, master's degree in UTEP in El Paso, working.
UTIP is University of Texas, El Paso.
Yes, so another
Okay.
acronym.
Another acronym, but
Another
that one
acronym.
I could
Yeah, you got
translate.
it. And so in El Paso, I worked a lot in desert ecosystems.
Right.
So there was, even though my path was kind of winding, it always kind of had this theme. I guess there was
Mm-hmm.
a theme, and that's what led me to kind of seek out these different opportunities. But they were all, now I know in my life, they all are intertwined, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was always looking for, was understanding interconnections. And now I have this beautiful opportunity to literally interconnect all of those opportunities, that all of those roads that I took along my
Mm-hmm.
journey are still, taking me on my journey, but I'm able to intertwine
You're a good
all those
braider.
roads. I'm a good braider. Yeah, that's, uh, it takes time to see where the braid flows.
So tell me about your time at the ETH. How did that affect the choices you made when you came back to the US and what you're doing now?
So I loved my time at ETH. I want to say that it was easy. It was definitely challenging being.
You want to say it's easy or you don't want to say it's easy?
I don't want to say. I mean,
Good.
it was not easy. It was not an easy experience. It was not an easy experience. I had a blast at ETH, and with the research team I worked with. I was at the group of plant nutrition, in the agricultural sciences department, which is under environmental science. And, my opportunity, or let me go back a little bit, because I have to be honest, I didn't really know about ETH Zurich,
Mm-hmm.
prior to me applying to the university. I had a professor that was on my master's committee, um, at UTEP, that was from Switzerland, that
Oh.
had done his undergrad, I believe his bachelor's degree at ETH Zurich.
Hmm.
He's an isotope scientist named Ben Bruner, Dr. Ben Bruner,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved working with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one that, is like, hey, there's this institution, he told me more about Switzerland, and I started looking at opportunities in Switzerland, and this particular opportunity in nutrient cycling, looking at more of this space application came up, and he was like, go for it. He said, apply. And I applied, and I was shocked, that I got an interview and got a
Hmm.
call back, and it actually put the fire under my butt that I had to finish my master's. I ended up finishing my master's degree in 2.5 years, so or a year and a half.
That's quick.
It was very quick.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had the data, and I just needed to analyze it, so that I could present it to Dr. Emmanuel Frossard and Dr. Astrid Oberson, who lead that group. I was able to present them with my research, and it looked at phosphorus and using phosphorus isotopes, which is where where a lot of their work is done. And so it
Hmm.
was exciting to kind of see this all kind of come together. Um, but I remember my first time in Switzerland. I came for, they invited me to give a talk to their group, and then I went on to a conference in Rome with Dr. Frossard, and I was so nervous. I was so nervous to give a talk to the group that also they were, the group of scientists that I had been reading about and studying, during my master's because of the phosphorus work that they have done. And so I got to meet, everyone in the group. But I have to say, my nerves were calmed as soon as I got there. They they're hard in the sense of they want they want you to be good. And that's what I totally appreciated. And
Hmm.
that actually calmed my nerves because in a sense, they were not there to make you stumble. They were there to make you better.
It
And
wasn't a gotcha
it wasn't a
environment.
got you
It was
environment.
be the best
It was
possible you can be.
exactly,
That's great.
exactly. And that's what I felt, as soon as, after my first meeting that, I knew I was like, this is going to be challenging.
Hmm.
This is not going to be easy, but it made me want to work their, their excitement about it, and um, their gusto, their excitement as well made me want to work harder. And so I felt that from the very first time I stepped through, the lab doors, and also being out in Eshikon was just amazing. You leave the city, you take a train into the countryside of of Switzerland, and I was then working at an agricultural research station that was surrounded by horses and cows and trees, and
Oh,
I could
that's so
easily go
cool.
walk into so I loved the juxtaposition as well of going from the city into the countryside. And I think that for me was very important because I am from more of a rural area. I'm not a big city person, and so that I think also helped my focus, and helped also the camaraderie of that group being out in the research station.
And how did the experience really help you? What skills did that give you that you're able to apply
Oh,
now?
oh my gosh. It gave me the skills to be able to, I think, reach and talk to anyone from any background.
Hmm.
Because we were a multicultural group.
Hmm.
We had folks from Sri Lanka, Sweden, obviously Switzerland, the US, um, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire. So we had people from all over, and just having an opportunity to share multicultural experiences. So I think being in that group allowed me to even be to gain and grow my skills of talking with folks and connecting with different people. Um, but I also learned the beauty of being a stronger teacher and a
Hmm.
stronger, educator. I had an opportunity to do a lot of mentoring for students, and I had really great mentors. Dr.
Hmm.
Frossard and Dr. Astrid Oberson were amazing mentors to me. So learning from them and then being able to pass that on to students as well, of being an open communicator, being an understanding communicator, and um, being open and honest with not only yourself but your students that you're working with. I think I learned that a lot through working with both of them in the agricultural sciences department. Um, I also learned that a balance is very important.
Hmm.
I think a lot of PhD students um, don't understand balance. And, that was something that I definitely had to understand and had to work at. Um, because, especially in plant sciences, I know it's, in any career, but I have to say in plant sciences, we are growing plants that you don't get a time off. It's like being a mom.
They don't take Sunday off. It's like, no.
They don't take Saturday off. You are going every single day to take care of your plants and making sure that, your parameters are set, things are moving forward, that, um, you cannot take that for granted. As much as I would have loved to sleep in sometimes on the weekends, that's just not what's
Not on.
possible. And then finding that balance, on your off time. So maybe after you've done your harvest and you're doing your data analysis, is kind of determining, when that balance is there. And so I think that was a big factor. But we had just great. I think another thing I will never forget is, I think I was probably maybe been there for a month, reading away on different, trying to build out my literature review.
Hmm.
And I was staying late. I was eating lunch at my desk, which is a big faux pas. I
And they
think
don't do that in
they don't do that
Switzerland.
in
Yep.
Switzerland. And the professor, Dr. Frossard, came to me. He's like, "This is not healthy. You do not need to be eating at your desk. You need to come down and eat with us." And that moment made
It clicked a switch.
clicked a switch in my brain of, I don't need to be, killing myself to be doing this. I don't need to. I think I probably I had a feeling I needed to impress them. I needed to, show that I was meant to be there, that I could do this work, but actually it was having the opposite effect. Um, and so from then on, I tried to eat lunch with my team and, take the coffee breaks. That is something that we do not do in the US.
It's unique. Yep.
You're around 10, between 10 and 10:30, and then around 4 and 4:30, you take a coffee break. Um, and, that was probably some of the greatest advice that I had received from Dr. Frossard is don't eat at my desk. And I have
That's great.
maintained that throughout, into my career now, into, setting those boundaries, making sure you give time to yourself, give time to converse with others, and step away from the work, because that is most likely when you're going to have your breakthroughs.
Understood. So, one last question before we close. You're teaching now. How do you enjoy doing it? Or do you enjoy doing it?
I love it.
Hmm.
So I was able to teach during my master's, and I was able to kind of assist teaching while I was in Switzerland,
Hmm.
teach some labs, and then, of course, mentor students, which was absolutely my favorite part. And so teaching now is just such a thrill. I love working with students. I love seeing the wonder on student faces, on all different learners. And again, it's just so fulfilling for me to see people get excited about science, no matter what that means to them, and getting them excited about science that then connects them to whatever it can be in the environment or in space. And I'm thrilled to continue to do that. I'm excited to continue teaching and continue opening opportunities for students, not only here in Colorado, but around the world.
That's a great note. Grace, thank you so much. That was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Susan. This was a blast. I know I talked a lot, but it's very exciting to
This is
talk about
good.
all of this.
So, thank you. And I'm going to close with asking you a couple of the questions that we ask every one of our
Okay.
guests, some of which you've given us hints about so far, which is when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a scientist,
Hmm.
specifically a medical scientist and a professional swimmer.
And a professional swimmer. What
Yes.
what what kind of stroke did you do?
Oh, just the breaststroke
That's
or
so
the overhead.
hard.
It is a hard one. Or just, I just wanted to be, I just loved being in the water. I don't even think I really had a stroke. I think I tried out the strokes. That dream though left quite quickly.
I understand. And what are you curious about today? What are you learning about?
Oh my gosh. I think something that I continue to be very curious about is the indigenous perspective. So,
Hmm.
understanding the world and from different cultural perspectives and Native people's perspectives, and how can we continue to intersect what we consider westernized science
Hmm.
with indigenous science, and because there's a lot of influence of indigenous science into Western science, but there's not a lot of direct understanding, and a lot of voices are not being heard. And so I continue to at least want to be a learner and listener, to understanding that indigenous perspective and how I can weave that into my teachings and provide also hopefully a platform for others to speak out about that, those interconnections.
Really interesting. So, books. You mentioned you grew up reading a lot of science fiction. What were your favorites?
Oh, what was some? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Always good.
Always good. Um, One of my all-time favorite books, though, is called Stargirl.
Oh, I read Stargirl.
Yeah, I've read it multiple times. That is probably one of my favorite books. I can't wait to share that with my daughter. Um, I Let's see what else. I'm trying to think of ones that I've read multiple times. Um, but I have to say right now I also love mystery books. So I've been reading, Louise Penny books. I'm right now reading The Lost City of the Monkey God, which is a very interesting take on the turn of actually using space, kind of similar space research.
Hmm.
LiDAR systems are, used a lot on satellite systems to understand anthropological sites.
Hmm.
Um, but I have to say, my father, he would read me books or he would make up stories, when I was a kid about, different realms. I grew up loving Lord of the Rings. Um, so, uh, I have I like a lot of different, literature takes, and always up for a good read or a good movie.
Fantastic. And what is your favorite place in Zurich?
Oh,
At the ETH or around town or?
it's definitely around town. So I lived near the University of Zurich campus, the Erkel campus,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed the name is mistaking me, or is leaving me at the moment, especially during COVID when we were able to go out.
Mhm.
I went every single day, rain, shine, snow, into the forests above Zurich. So the ones that connect to the zoo, well, I don't know why
Yes.
it's escaping me. I and a lot of mountain bikers would get mad at me, but I decided to walk on and run on mountain biking trails rather than the actual trails because I could be engulfed by the trees. That was continuously one of my favorite places to explore. Because even though I was in the city, I felt that I was not in the city, especially during the times when we had to be, we couldn't travel. And so that's probably one of my favorite places.
That's a great forest.
Yeah, it's a
It's
great
a great
forest.
forest. Grace, thank you so much. That was a wonderful conversation, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experience and your insights.
Well, thank you, Susan. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I am just thankful to have been asked to join the podcast.
Thank you. I'm Susan Kish, host of the We Are ETH podcast, telling the story of the alumni and friends of the ETH Zurich, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. ETH regularly ranks amongst the top universities of the world in terms of cutting-edge research, science, and people. The people who were there, the people who are there, and the people who will be there. Please subscribe to this podcast and join us wherever you listen. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please give us a good ranking on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. And I'd like to close by thanking our producers at ETH Alumni and LE Media, and especially to thank you, our listeners, for joining us.